Look at this street queen, thinking she belongs in first class. The mocking voice cut through the air of the international terminal, sharp as a blade. Metal scissors glinted in Linda Marshall's hand, the gate supervisor at B12, as they caught the cold fluorescence overhead. Seconds later came the slicing sound, swift and merciless, and Naomi Carter's black curls fell to the white tile floor. Naomi did not scream. She did not fight back. Two male employees, Scott Hale, a burly security guard with veins bulging down his arms, and Ethan Cruz, a young attendant live, streaming the scene, held her shoulders firmly against the chair. Laughter erupted from the crowd. Phones lifted high, hundreds of flashes firing like fireworks of humiliation. "Cut it all off! Make her look professional for once!" someone shouted. Naomi lifted her head, her brown eyes steady and still. They did not reflect anger, but something deeper, an unshakable calm that made others instinctively step back. "Continue, please," she said quietly, her voice smooth as silk yet cold as steel. Linda paused for a split second, smirk tugging at her lips. "Sweetheart, this is a family airline. Maybe next time, try looking like a real businesswoman." The group burst out laughing. Ethan turned the camera closer to Naomi's face, gloating. "You're the entitled princess getting her royal haircut." The live view count spiked. Comments flooded the screen. Finally, some discipline. Naomi's boarding pass slipped from her bag, seat 1A, first class, crushed beneath Scott's polished shoe. Her business cards scattered across the floor. Carter Aviation Solutions, Federal Contractor, unread, ignored. A thin line of blood traced her scalp, but she kept her chin high. In the crowd, a teenage girl whispered, still recording, "Why isn't she crying?" The question hung in the air, piercing the silence no one dared to face. Linda raised the scissors again, steel glinting coldly. "We're not done. Let's make this clean." The slicing resumed, blending with the laughter and the boarding announcements blaring through the speakers. But amid that chaos, something else was building. The silence of Naomi Carter. It was not fear. It was memory. Precise and controlled, the kind of silence that only comes from someone who once commanded storms. When Linda finally stepped back, admiring her work, Naomi slowly bent down and picked up one of her cards, now tangled with strands of her own hair. The paper was torn, leaving only fragments of her title visible. Carter, Federal. The crowd roared again. They thought they were watching a spectacle. They didn't realize they had just laid hands on a woman who could bring down their entire system with a single call. Naomi clenched the damaged card in her palm. The loudspeaker announced, "Flight 447 to New York, boarding in 28 minutes." 28 minutes until their world would never be the same again. The sound of snip, snip finally stopped. Black curls lay scattered around the chair like brittle grass after a storm. Linda Marshall shook the scissors from her hand, her voice echoing crisply through the airport intercom. "Passenger none. Compliant with grooming standards. We're just enforcing company policy." Each word landed like a sanctioned verdict. Victor Lang, the assistant terminal manager, a middle-aged man with a thin suit and an overconfident stride, stepped out from the ticket counter, holding his radio as if it granted him absolute authority. He glanced at Naomi once, then exchanged a knowing look with Linda. "Good work, Marshal. This airline has an image to protect." Naomi remained seated, her hands resting gently on her knees, the dried blood on her scalp forming dark streaks against her skin. She said nothing. No one realized that behind her stillness was a mind recording every word, every face, every detail with the precision of a camera, merciless and exact. Ethan Cruz kept filming, his tone dripping with mockery and thrill. 2,000 viewers now. Everyone's loving this. Hashtag #GateJustice. Look, guys, she's just sitting there like she's above us. A woman in the crowd shouted, "Maybe she is. Look at that watch, Cartier. Probably fake." Laughter spread like a slick of oil. Scott Hale stomped on the fallen hair, muttering just loud enough for every microphone to catch. Black curls everywhere. Guess she thought that makes her special. Victor narrowed his eyes, folding his arms. "Ms. Marshall, make sure she doesn't board like that. Family airline, not some urban runway." He turned to the crowd with a bureaucratic smile. "We take professionalism seriously here." 2 TSA agents arrived, Agent Ramirez and Agent Collins, alerted by the radio call. They froze, puzzled by the sight of a woman nearly shaven in the middle of an audience. "Is she the disruptive passenger?" Ramirez asked. Victor nodded without hesitation. "Yes. Refused to comply with grooming policy. We had to take action." Naomi lifted her head, her voice calm and steady. "Policy enforcement includes physical assault now." Ramirez hesitated, but Victor cut him off. "Ma'am, please calm down. You're disturbing the peace. Perhaps someone can pick you up. Maybe a boyfriend." The crowd erupted again in laughter. Naomi looked at her watch, the real Cartier glinting gold under the fluorescent light. "Continue," she said softly, the same tone as before. That single word silenced the terminal for one fragile beat before the whispering returned, sharper, crueler. In a corner, a young girl live streaming whispered to her viewers, "Y'all, she's so calm, it's creepy. Why isn't she fighting back?" No one knew Naomi was waiting, not for rescue, but for timing. Linda grabbed an electric clipper, the steel blade glinting in Naomi's dark eyes. "Let's finish this properly," she said, her voice almost gleeful. The buzzing filled the air. A few passengers clapped. "Shave it all! Bald is better," Ethan yelled into his stream. 3,000 viewers! Look at her face, still acting like a queen." Naomi didn't move. Her eyes flicked to the phone screen, lighting up inside her purse. Jenna Park calling. 14 missed calls. A text appeared. "FAA contract meeting in 30 minutes. Status?" Naomi exhaled slowly, her breath even, deliberate. She whispered under her breath, "Almost time." Linda set the clipper down and brushed her hands. "They're much better. Now she looks like she belongs in coach." The terminal erupted in applause, as if witnessing some moral victory. But at the far end of the gate, a woman murmured to her husband, "Something about her feels off. Too calm." He chuckled. "Maybe she's in shock." No, Naomi wasn't in shock. She was counting down. Inside her silent phone, the encrypted system of Carter Aviation was waiting for one command to activate. And once that command was sent, everyone at Gate B12 would learn they hadn't just disciplined a passenger. They had touched a storm with federal clearance. The electric clipper went silent, just as a different sound pierced the laughter. A single phone ringing. Naomi Carter's iPhone vibrated in her palm, its blue screen reflecting off her calm face. The name on display read, Jenna Park, Executive Operations. Naomi exhaled softly and lowered the phone to her lips. Her voice, low and steady, carried clearly through the noise. Jenna, initiate code 7. Authorization, Carter Alpha 7. For the first 2 seconds, no one understood. Ethan Cruz laughed, turning to his camera. Look, she's calling her assistant, pretending she's important. Linda Marshall smirked. Let her. Maybe she can book herself a new haircut. Then the airport lights flickered 3 times. A metallic ping echoed sharply through the speakers. Every phone in sight, Ethan's, the spectators', the staff's, went black at once, displaying a single red message. Executive Authority Override. Federal Protocol activated. Silence fell like a lead blanket. The laughter stopped mid-breath. Hey, what's happening to my stream? Ethan stammered, tapping frantically. It's gone. The feed's dead. Scott stepped back, staring at his dead screen. Linda frowned. Probably a glitch. Airport Wi-Fi's garbage. But then a cold, metallic voice echoed from the ceiling speakers. Attention all personnel. Code 7 in effect. All gate operations suspended pending federal oversight review. Gate B12 was packed with people, but in an instant, all movement ceased. Even the air felt heavy. Naomi stood. For the first time in 15 minutes of humiliation, she rose. Her hair was uneven, her scalp streaked with dried blood, yet her posture was straight as steel. The golden light above cast a long shadow beneath her, tall, unwavering. She bent down, picking up each blood-stained business card from the floor, one by one. One card was torn in half, only a few words still legible. Federal Aviation Contractor, Level 7 Compliance. Linda stared and forced a laugh. That's fake, right? People print those online. Naomi lifted her gaze, locking eyes with Victor Lang, the man who had proudly ordered her policy enforcement. Her voice wasn't loud, but it resonated through every corner. Mr. Lang, you've just assaulted a federal contractor on duty. Victor frowned, chuckling nervously. Excuse me? Lady, you're on airline property. Not anymore, Naomi interrupted. As of 30 seconds ago, you're on federal property, and every second you breathe here is now under Department of Transportation jurisdiction. The words fell like a gavel strike. The 2 TSA agents exchanged a sharp look, their posture instantly stiffening. They recognized the phrase, Code 7, a term reserved for federal emergencies. Overhead, the flight monitor flickered. Flight 447, delayed. Federal review in progress. Linda began to tremble. This can't be real. We were just following policy. Naomi looked directly at her. You were following prejudice. Outside, rain began to fall over Chicago, tapping against the glass like shattering crystal. The crowd started to back away, their silence heavy and uneasy. Naomi straightened her blood-stained shirt, fastening her Cartier watch onto her wrist. Now, she said softly, almost to herself, let's begin the real inspection. Red warning lights flashed across the wall, and from the speakers, the automated voice rang out again. "All management personnel report to Crisis Command. Federal authority in effect." The atmosphere shifted completely, from a public spectacle to a federal crime scene. No one was laughing now. Only Naomi Carter, the woman they had mocked and stripped of her dignity, allowed herself a faint smile, equal parts pity and warning. In her eyes, the storm had begun, and this time, she was the one in control. The sound of rain outside blended with the faint wail of security alarms inside the airport, a haunting backdrop to a truth finally emerging. The entire B-12 terminal was sealed off. The passengers who had once cheered now stood frozen, clutching their useless phones, all of them locked and flashing the same red warning. "Federal evidence mode, recording disabled." Naomi Carter took a step forward. Every movement was deliberate, graceful, and slow, as if no one left in that crowd was worthy of her haste. Dried blood streaked from her temple down her white collar, a silent but commanding mark. Victor Lang, still unwilling to believe, forced a laugh. "Okay, lady, this little drama's gone far enough. You can't just shout federal and take over an airport." Naomi stopped less than a meter from him. "Mr. Lang," she said quietly, each word slicing through the air. "You don't understand where you're standing." She bent down and picked up a small metal badge tangled with her fallen hair. Every eye followed her. When she turned it over, the reflection of its silver surface lit her face. Federal Aviation Administration, Level 7 Security Clearance, Department of Transportation. A collective gasp broke the silence. Linda Marshall staggered back half a step, her voice trembling. "Level 7? Ethan Cruz stared blankly, his camera still raised out of habit, but his screen now read, "Transmission blocked by federal authority." Naomi continued, her voice even and cold. "Carter Aviation Solutions is the consulting firm responsible for your airline's bias detection and federal compliance protocols. I designed the system that's supposed to prevent what just happened here." The air thickened. Laughter was gone. Only suffocating silence remained. Behind her, Agent Ramirez stood at attention, his face pale. "Ma'am, are you saying you're the federal contractor your agency reports to?" Naomi finished. "Yes," Victor stammered. I didn't know. No one told us." Naomi turned to him, her gaze devoid of anger, but carrying the kind of authority that made men lower their eyes. "Mr. Lang, ignorance of federal law has never been an excuse." She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim silver laptop, its surface engraved with the logo of Carter Aviation Solutions. When she opened it, the screen lit up with layers of encrypted windows, federal authentication keys, live monitoring feeds, and a line glowing across the top. "FAA Contractor Evidence Uplink Active." Above them, the ceiling cameras rotated slightly. Naomi looked up and spoke clearly, her voice steady. "Recording authorized under Federal Oversight Act, Section 40-2. Linda's knees nearly gave out. "Oh my God, this is real." Naomi turned her gaze toward her. "Mrs. Marshall, you assaulted a federal contractor while she was on active duty. Every second of it is now evidence." A man in the crowd whispered, his voice shaking. We all saw it. We filmed it." Naomi replied without looking back. "And that's precisely why you're all witnesses." Outside the glass, security lights swept across the floor, reflecting off strands of hair still scattered near the gate. The entire space glowed under a sterile, icy light, bright, merciless, with nowhere to hide. Naomi closed the laptop, her voice low but carrying through the air like a verdict. "This gate, this terminal, this airline, they now fall under federal investigation." She paused, a faint, almost pitying smile crossing her lips. "And you, all of you, just became part of my case study." From the distance, the final announcement rang over the intercom. "All management personnel report immediately to Crisis Command. CEO Charlotte Reed is en route." Linda collapsed into a seat, hands trembling so violently she couldn't hold the scissors. Ethan swallowed hard. Victor couldn't meet Naomi's eyes. And Naomi, the woman they had mocked, humiliated and stripped of dignity, stood there with cropped hair and a calm, unwavering gaze. The storm had passed, leaving only the stillness of true authority. Naomi Carter didn't need to shout, didn't need to threaten. The truth itself was already speaking for her. The sharp echo of high heels cut through the airport corridor, like a drumbeat announcing judgment. CEO Charlotte Reed, 50, 4 years old, wearing a slate-grey coat, hair neatly tied back, her face carved in cold marble, strode toward Gate B12. Behind her trailed Diane Mercer, Chief Legal Counsel, Robert Kim, Vice President of Operations, and Lisa Moreno, Head of Crisis Management. The group moved like a funeral procession, a funeral for the company's own reputation. When Charlotte arrived, the sight before her stopped her cold. Black hair strewn across the floor like ashes, scissors lying near a chair, a cluster of pale-faced employees frozen in place. At the center stood Naomi Carter, motionless, back straight, the cold yellow light casting over her uneven cropped hair like a distorted crown, the crown of truth. "Someone explain this," Charlotte said softly, but her voice struck like thunder. No one answered. Only the automated announcement replied. "Federal Code 7 in effect. All local authority suspended." Charlotte turned sharply toward Victor Lang, who still clutched his radio with trembling hands. "Lang? Ma'am, it was just a grooming enforcement." "On a federal contractor," Naomi interrupted, her voice barely above a breath, but powerful enough to turn every head. Charlotte's eyes met Naomi's, and for the first time, she saw a kind of defiance that money couldn't buy, not anger, but absolute control. "Who are you?" Charlotte asked. Naomi set her laptop on the chair and opened it. The soft blue glow reflected off the wall, revealing the Federal Oversight Interface with the seal of the U.S. Department of Transportation. "Naomi Carter, CEO of Carter Aviation Solutions, FAA Level 7 Federal Contractor. The designer of the anti-bias system. Your airline signed a contract for 2 years ago." The silence was total. Diane Mercer, a veteran lawyer who had won dozens of high-profile cases, felt her stomach twist. Naomi continued, "And today, I've become living proof that your system has failed." The airport lights flickered. Security cameras rotated overhead, automatically recording. Naomi tapped a key on the laptop, and lines of code appeared on the screen. "Evidence uploading. Civil rights violation detected. Incident severity. Level red." Lisa Moreno, trying to keep her composure, spoke up. "Ms. Carter, I'm sure this can be explained." Naomi cut her off, her gaze sweeping over the frozen employees: Linda, Scott, Ethan, Victor. "Perhaps. With video evidence, 3,200 live viewers, and multiple devices already streaming to the federal cloud, any explanation you offer will be reviewed in federal court, not a PR conference room." Charlotte Reed stepped closer to Naomi. The two women stood nearly face to face, a single step apart. The CEO took a slow breath, her tone calm but tense. "As one businesswoman to another, I'm certain we can handle this professionally and privately." Naomi tilted her head slightly, smiling with the precision of a blade. "Private? Mrs. Reed, this stopped being private the moment your staff decided to broadcast my humiliation to the world." She opened another window on her screen, real-time analytics flaring to life, viewer graphs, trending tags flooding the nation. Nahargate Justice, #hair assault, #Carter case. Robert Kim stepped back, muttering under his breath. "This is catastrophic." Naomi closed her laptop, the sound crisp and final. "Yes, Mr. Kim, but it's also an opportunity. An opportunity to see whether this airline chooses ethics or its legacy of discrimination." Outside the glass, the rain had stopped. The last light of dusk spilled through the window, illuminating Naomi's face. She turned toward the crowd that had once mocked her. Her voice was calm, steady, but it rang like a declaration. "Tonight, this gate becomes a case study, and every single one of you will be part of history." Charlotte Reed felt something she had never known in her entire career: the loss of power within her own empire. Naomi Carter was no longer a victim. She had become the prosecutor of justice itself. The air in Terminal B12 was so heavy, it felt as though even the oxygen had been drained by the weight of the law. Everyone stood frozen, unwilling witnesses to a crime now laid bare under the spotlight. Naomi Carter sat down, opened her laptop once more, and the soft blue glow lit her face, calm, composed, terrifyingly professional. Across the screen ran a single command line: "Federal Contractor Oversight, Case 447A initiated." Diane Mercer, the company's chief legal counsel, swallowed hard. "Ms. Carter, if this is truly a federal investigation, we're ready to cooperate." Naomi looked up, her dark eyes reflecting the pale yellow lights. "No, Mrs. Mercer, this isn't cooperation. This is mandatory compliance." Charlotte Reed tried to interject, her tone carefully measured. "We deeply regret what happened. I'm sure we can come to some sort of arrangement." "There is no arrangement," Naomi cut in, her voice low and sharp as a blade. "You assaulted a federal contractor during active duty. This is no longer a corporate issue. It's a federal criminal matter." She pressed enter. Instantly, the large digital display near the boarding gate lit up, showing a rotating seal of the Department of Transportation. A mechanical female voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "Federal civil rights violation detected. Protocol review pending confirmation from Director Alvarez." A soft chime followed. Naomi answered an incoming video call. The screen displayed the stern face of Director Miguel Alvarez, Chief of Civil Rights Enforcement for the Department of Transportation. "Ms. Carter, this is Director Alvarez. We've received your evidence stream. Confirmation? Naomi's voice did not waver. Confirmed. Assault on a Level 7 federal contractor. Public humiliation. Racial and gender bias indicators. All recorded under FAA jurisdiction. Director Alvarez's tone deepened. Understood. Code 7 escalation approved. All local management must comply with federal command immediately. When the call ended, the only sound left was the rain hammering harder against the glass ceiling. Naomi turned back to Charlotte. Do you know what the penalty for this violation is? Charlotte said nothing. Naomi tilted her head slightly, reading from the screen. Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act, Assault on Federal Personnel, Hate Crime Enhancement under 18 U.S.C., Section 2405. Fine. Up to $250,000 per incident, per participant, plus criminal liability. Scott Hale, the security guard who had restrained her, swallowed nervously. Wait, criminal? Like prison? Naomi met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Yes, federal prison. Linda Marshall backed away, clutching her hands together. I didn't know who you were. I was just following protocol. No, Naomi replied softly. You were following prejudice, not protocol. Diane Mercer grabbed her notepad, desperate to regain control. Carter, under procedure, we can propose a settlement agreement. Naomi closed her laptop. The click was as final as the snap of handcuffs. There will be no settlement. Only two options. Full compliance with federal requirements, or the immediate involvement of the Department of Transportation and the Department of Justice. I'll read the conditions now. She pulled a folder from her bag, the federal seal embossed in deep blue. Condition 1, she said evenly, is truth. I want every action, every name, and every recording of the live stream submitted as evidence, voluntarily. Her gaze landed on Ethan. If not, that will be classified as destruction of federal evidence. Ethan's face drained of color. I'll upload it now. I didn't know. Now you do, Naomi replied, her voice like ice. She reopened her laptop and fixed her eyes on CEO Charlotte Reed. You have 10 minutes to prove this airline is smart enough to survive the night. I will read my demands. And they are not for negotiation. They are for survival. The airport speakers crackled to life, announcing the emergency meeting. All executives report to Gate B12 immediately for federal compliance review. Charlotte Reed drew a long, slow breath. In that moment, she understood. The power she thought she held had just been transferred. Not by the board, not by law, but by a woman whose hair had been cut in public. A woman who had turned humiliation into the final ultimatum of justice. Gate B12 was no longer a waiting area. It had become a courtroom. Naomi Carter sat upright, her laptop resting on her knees. The glow from the screen illuminated her face, turning her deep brown eyes into shards of cold glass. Across from her stood the airline's leadership. Charlotte Reed, Diane Mercer, Robert Kim, Lisa Moreno, and the 4 employees, Linda, Scott, Victor, and Ethan, now reduced to defendants without a verdict. Naomi tapped lightly on the keyboard, her voice clear, each word striking like a gavel. We're going to talk about compliance, not in the language of PR, but in the language of federal law. She opened a document stamped in blue with the FAA seal. First requirement. She paused, locking eyes with Linda Marshall, the woman who had held the scissors. Immediate termination of 4 personnel: Linda Marshall, Scott Hale, Victor Lang, and Ethan Cruz. No severance, no letters of recommendation. Their files will be updated with federal civil rights violation codes. Linda's knees buckled. "I have 3 children. I was only following." Naomi cut her off, her expression unflinching. "You had 3 children when you decided to cut a woman's hair in public. That decision wasn't forced, it was chosen." No one breathed. Naomi continued. Second requirement: direct compensation of $750,000 for assaulting a federal contractor, racial and gender discrimination, and violation of personal dignity. Robert Kim flipped through his notepad, mentally calculating, sweat beading on his forehead. Naomi glanced at him briefly, her tone soft yet razor sharp. "That's the minimum mandated under the Civil Rights Act. Consider it your tuition fee." Third, she went on, voice steady, a mandatory 21-day training program covering intersectional bias, hair-based discrimination, federal contractor identification, and crisis de-escalation. Every frontline employee will attend, every test must be passed, and all sessions will be overseen by the Department of Transportation. Charlotte Reed nodded slightly, struggling to stay composed. "We can arrange that if you provide the list of instructors." Naomi smiled faintly. "The list is already prepared. All sessions will be conducted by Carter Aviation Solutions, under a new contract, of course." The air froze. Charlotte understood immediately. Naomi wasn't just demanding justice. She was redefining the balance of power. Fourth, Naomi said, implementation of the Intersectional Dignity Protocol across all airports within 36 months. Real-time bias monitoring devices, behavioral and language analysis, automated reporting directly to federal oversight. The first quarter will be supervised by my team. Diane Mercer leaned toward Charlotte and whispered through clenched teeth, "She's turning us into permanent clients." Naomi heard her. Without turning her head, she replied, "No, I'm turning you into a permanent example." Fifth, she continued, a public apology within 12 hours, signed by CEO Charlotte Reed, acknowledging that assault based on natural hair and gender constitutes a violation of civil rights law. No euphemisms, no excuses. It will be broadcast on every platform the airline owns. Charlotte closed her eyes. She knew that apology would trigger a storm, shareholders, media, lawsuits, but resistance now was pointless. "And finally," Naomi said, closing her laptop with a soft but final click, "a transparent advancement program for women of color. Annual progress reports, independent audits, publicly available to both the federal government and the press, not for atonement, but to ensure this never happens again." Silence. Only the clock in the terminal ticked slowly, marking each second like a countdown. Naomi rose, her tone softened, but not gentle. "Mrs. Reed," she said, "I don't need a personal apology. I need structural change. My hair will grow back. But if this system doesn't change, thousands more will lose something far greater: their dignity." She paused, scanning the room. Every head was lowered. "You have 10 minutes to sign the compliance document. After 10 minutes, I'll activate Phase 2, the Federal Investigation Protocol. The white light reflected off the uneven strands of Naomi's hair. She didn't need power. She was power. Just 7 minutes after Naomi Carter declared the final 10, everything unfolded like a perfectly programmed play. Charlotte Reed signed her name. Her hand trembled, but the ink line remained sharp and dry, like the closing sound of a coffin lid sealing her career. The moment the signature was complete, Naomi tapped her laptop. A string of automated commands executed instantly. Compliance acknowledged. Code 7 resolution initiated. Gate B12, chaotic for nearly an hour, suddenly fell silent. No more shouting, no more laughter, only the steady whir of a portable printer releasing termination letters. Linda Marshall, Scott Hale, Victor Lang, and Ethan Cruz, 4 names printed in bold at the top of each page. Effective immediately. Termination with cause, Naomi read aloud, her voice echoing evenly through the room. The 4 trembled as they signed, none daring to object. Linda sobbed as she scrawled her name. 18 years with this company, all gone because of hair. Naomi's gaze softened only slightly. No, Mrs. Marshall, you lost it because you forgot that others have dignity too. Ethan, the young man who had laughed while live streaming, slumped into his chair. I just wanted to go viral, he muttered. Not like this. Scott Hale unclipped his security badge, his hands shaking. I was just following orders. Naomi glanced at him, her tone cold as steel. History has heard that excuse too many times. Charlotte stood motionless, watching her employees being escorted out, as if parts of her own body were being amputated. Diane Mercer, the legal counsel, was already calculating damages, compensation, consulting fees, stock losses, and the inevitable disaster of the press. Naomi closed her laptop, looking around the terminal that had now become a scene of reckoning. Phase 1 completed, she said quietly, almost to herself, yet every ear caught the words. Now for Phase 2. The public truth. 4 minutes later, every digital board in O'Hare Airport flashed a scrolling notice. Press statement. Official apology from Skylink. Airlines. CEO Charlotte Reed to address public at 8:30 p.m. The news rippled outward like a shockwave. Journalists near the security checkpoint rushed toward Gate B12, cameras rolling. All the lights converged on one figure, the woman with uneven hair, a blood-stained shirt, standing tall as if conducting a press conference. A reporter called out, "Ms. Carter, are you pressing criminal charges?" Naomi turned, her eyes calm. Justice doesn't always need vengeance, she said. Sometimes it just needs architecture. The quote hit social media within minutes, reaching 2.4 million views in 10 minutes. Hashtags, #CarterCase, #hair assault, and #Gate B12 justice climbed into the national top 3. In the airline's media office, the communications directors panicked. But instead of hiding, Charlotte Reed chose to face it. She stepped onto a makeshift podium at Gate B12, cameras rolling live. Her voice was hoarse but resolute. Tonight, our airline failed. We failed Ms. Naomi Carter, a federal contractor and a respected member of the aviation community. More importantly, we failed every woman of color who travels expecting dignity and safety. The crowd was silent. No applause. No dissent. Naomi stood in the back, her eyes drifting to the floor, where her severed curls still lay scattered, mingled with yellow light and the quiet tears of those who had wronged her. Charlotte continued, "This incident was not a misunderstanding. It was a violation of law, of ethics, of humanity. And starting tonight, we begin rebuilding from truth." As she bowed her head, Naomi saw something genuine. No longer a detached executive, but a human being confronting collapse and rebirth. Outside, the news was erupting. CNN, BBC, The Guardian, Al Jazeera, all carried the same headline. Federal contractor assaulted at airport sparks nationwide reform. Naomi left the gate as federal officers began sealing the area. A young employee lowered his gaze as she passed and whispered, "Ma'am, thank you." Naomi paused, her reply soft but firm. "Don't thank me. Just remember." As she stepped into the corridor, the cold Chicago night wind swept through her uneven hair. It was no longer a wound. It was the beginning scar of a new chapter in history. 3 weeks later, the glass headquarters of the U.S. Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C., shimmered in the morning light like a giant mirror of justice. On the 14th floor, the main conference room was packed. Airline executives, FAA representatives, officials from the Department of Justice, and members of the press filled every seat. On the central screen, the words glowed in white. Federal hearing, Carter investigation, case 447A. Naomi Carter entered, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, her short hair neatly styled. She was no longer a victim. She was the primary witness, and the woman redefining what an aviation investigation meant. Every camera turned toward her. A journalist whispered, "That's her, the woman from Gate B12. Naomi stood tall, placed a thick stack of files on the table, and said simply, "Let's begin." The investigation stretched on for more than 2 weeks, delving deep into the data Naomi had submitted. Surveillance systems, passenger recordings, and even federal security audio logs exposed a disturbing truth. 89 similar incidents had occurred within 18 months, most targeting women of color under the pretext of grooming standards. Of those, 3 were misclassified as policy violations, and 12 never reached management reports. When Director Miguel Alvarez presented his summary before the Senate, his voice echoed through the chamber. What happened to Ms. Carter wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a system that rewarded bias and punished difference. The room fell silent. That day, Charlotte Reed appeared alongside her attorney, Diane Mercer. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. She stood to address the federal committee, her voice raspy but steady. "I was the CEO of a successful airline until I realized that success means nothing when it's built on silence. What happened under my watch was a failure of leadership and of humanity." Naomi sat quietly, neither nodding nor interrupting. She knew this was not a moment of vengeance, but of transformation. 1 week later, the official ruling was released. Skylink Airlines was fined $2 million in federal penalties for 89 confirmed violations. The Department of Transportation imposed a 5-year consent decree, placing the airline under full oversight. Quarterly reports on racial and gender bias, minimum promotion quotas for women of color, annual independent audits with public disclosure, and 36 months of compliance supervision by Carter Aviation Solutions, Naomi's own firm. The press called it the most expensive haircut in corporate history. 2 months later, the impact rippled across the industry. Delta, United, Southwest, each launched intersectional bias reform programs. The European Union passed the Hair and Identity Protection Act. Canada, South Africa, and Australia adopted variations of Naomi's framework to reform their own civil aviation policies. In the United States, Congress introduced a bill inspired by her story, the Airline Passenger Dignity Act of 2025. The law required all airlines to respect natural hair, religious symbols, and cultural identity, banning any form of enforced appearance standards. During the Senate hearing, Naomi was invited as the key witness. She recalled the moment her hair was cut, not with grief, but with the composure of someone who had learned to turn pain into design. Hair discrimination, she said, was never about style. It was about control. And the moment we allow control over appearance, we lose control over dignity. An elderly senator, a former Air Force officer, stood and bowed his head to her. The chamber erupted in applause. After the law passed, Naomi returned to Chicago. Gate B12. The place that had once witnessed her humiliation now bore a small bronze plaque. This gate witnessed the rebirth of justice, dedicated to Naomi Carter, whose dignity redefined aviation. She stood there alone, the wind from the runway brushing against her short hair. From afar, the intercom echoed, "Now boarding Flight 447 to New York." Naomi smiled faintly and stepped toward the light. No more laughter, no more scornful eyes. Only a woman, once shamed before a crowd, now cutting through the silence of an entire system. 1 year after the Gate B12 incident, the world of aviation had changed. In Washington, under the bright lights of the U.S. Senate chamber, Naomi Carter stood at a polished oak podium, her hair now shoulder length, naturally curled, glowing under the lights like a quiet halo. Before her sat rows of lawmakers, aviation leaders, and international journalists. Behind her, the sign read, "First Anniversary Hearing, the Airline Passenger Dignity Act." Naomi smiled, not the smile of triumph, but the serene expression of someone who had seen justice take root. "Exactly 1 year ago," she began, "I had my hair cut in an airport. But the most painful part wasn't the scissors or the blood. It was the laughter of those who believed they had the right to define someone else's dignity." A ripple of silence spread through the room. Naomi continued, her voice steady and low, carrying the weight of a declaration rather than a speech. "But since that day, we've proven that dignity can be protected, not through anger, but through structure. Not through revenge, but through law." Senator Maria Gonzalez, chair of the Aviation Committee, rose from her seat. "Ms. Carter, in your opinion, what made this movement spread so widely?" Naomi looked around the room, at the faces of people who had once been adverse, now sitting quietly, listening. "Because it was never just the story of a black woman," she replied. "It was the story of anyone who has ever been judged by their appearance. Because when they touched my hair, they were really touching memory, history, and the dignity of an entire community." The room rose in applause. It was not loud, but deep and resonant, like the shared heartbeat of thousands of people. 2 months later, at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., a special ceremony was held. In the Civil Rights in the 21st Century Gallery, a small glass case displayed a pair of rusted scissors, a few strands of black hair, and a silver business card that read, "Naomi Carter, Federal Aviation Consultant." Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "From Humiliation to Reform, the cut that changed an industry." When Naomi saw it, she did not cry. She simply placed her hand against the glass, her gaze softening as if she were looking at her past self, the woman who had been humiliated, but still held her head high and smiled with quiet defiance. 3 months later, the Naomi Carter Women in Aviation Scholarship Program was launched. 78 young women of color across the United States received their first opportunity to enter aviation, a field that had long been closed to them. During the inaugural ceremony, Naomi stood before their eager faces and spoke slowly. "They once cut my hair to make me smaller, but when it grew back, it carried your future with it. Let it remind you that no one has the right to cut away your dreams." A young girl in the front row, her hair tight and curly, asked softly, "Do you ever regret it?" Naomi smiled gently. "No, because without that cut, we wouldn't have built this bridge." As the sun set over Chicago that evening, Naomi returned to O'Hare Airport. Gate B12, now freshly painted and gleaming, bore a new bronze plaque, dedicated to Naomi Carter, whose dignity redefined flight. She stood alone amid the rush of travelers, listening to the intercom call out, "Flight 447 to New York now boarding." Naomi closed her eyes. A soft breeze brushed through her hair, light, free, and alive, just like the freedom she had reclaimed. That night, she wrote the closing words of her TED Talk titled Strategic Dignity. Her final line left the entire audience in silence. They thought they were cutting my hair, but in truth, they only helped me cut away silence. And in the sound of those scissors, I heard an entire generation saying, "Dignity isn't granted, it's designed." Naomi Carter was no longer a victim, nor a hero. She had become an architect of justice, a woman who used her pain to build a system where no one else would have to endure the same. The hair that was once cut away had become a global symbol. Her story was written into textbooks, taught as a lesson on how humanity can turn humiliation into policy, tears into law, and outrage into reform. As the lights dimmed inside the museum, the small plaque beneath the scissors still glowed faintly, a quiet, eternal reminder. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is systematic reform. And somewhere, in every airport gate across the world, amid the constant flow of travelers, that spirit lived on, silent, steadfast, and indestructible. The sky remains the same, vast, blue, and endless. But the way we move through it has changed. The story of Naomi Carter is not just the journey of a woman who was misjudged, but a reminder to all of us that dignity does not need permission to exist. She did not seek revenge through anger. She answered with structure. She did not seek pity. She built laws so that those who came after her would never have to bow their heads. And from a single airport corridor, Naomi made an entire industry look at itself. When they cut her hair, They thought they were teaching her a lesson. But in truth, she was the one teaching them about the limits of power, that in a world full of prejudice, composure can be sharper than scissors, and justice can be written in the language of intelligence. If this story makes you believe that respect is not a privilege, but a standard, leave a like to help spread that message. If you have ever witnessed or experienced injustice, share your story in the comments, because your voice could be the beginning of another change. And if you believe there are still people who choose to respond with dignity instead of outrage, subscribe so you never miss journeys like this one. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge doesn't come from shouting. It comes from the quiet moment when one person stands up and the whole world falls silent to listen. Remember, dignity isn't requested, it's built. And every story where dignity is defended becomes a blueprint for a fairer future.